Now we start a news day with developing news from the Middle East, where Houthis in Yemen say Israeli strikes on the capital Sana'a have killed 6 people and injured dozens more. Israel says it launched the airstrikes in response to Houthi attacks. It targeted a Houthi military site in which Yemen's presidential palace is located, as well as 2 power plants and a fuel storage facility. The Houthis are backed by Iran and are considered a terrorist organization by the US, UK and others. They've controlled the Yemeni capital since a civil war broke out there in 2014. The Houthis say that on Friday they launched a missile towards Israel that targeted the country's main international airport. No serious damage or injuries were reported. The Houthis have repeatedly targeted Israel and vessels in the Red Sea throughout the Gaza war in what they say is a show of support for Palestinians. And for more on this, I'm joined by Behnam Ben Taleblu. He's a senior director of the Iran program at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Behnam, good to speak to you again. How significant is this round of attacks given the targets that Israel says it hit?
Great to be with you again, Steve. The targets signal that Israel is once again looking to engage in deterrence by punishment against the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. In the past, the Israelis have struck weapons depots, storage facilities, as well as some sites linked to leadership. But now they seem to be expanding that, given the fact that these Houthi rebels are continuing to fire Iran-provided ballistic missiles at Israeli territory.
And what do you make of the fact that it's close to where a presidential palace is?
Certainly, the idea of escalating the targeting to include political officials is something that was mentioned even during the course of the, I think, 2-month-long U.S. campaign, but something that the U.S. had largely shied away from. There was a question of intelligence. There wasn't necessarily a question of capabilities. So if the Israelis are moving indeed to strike, and it's too soon to tell, towards targeting senior-level Houthi political figures, that could represent a shift in that deterrence by punishment strategy. But that could largely be, again, a signaling strike designed to tell that leadership that they're not immune and that there will be mounting costs for continuing to fire ballistic missiles at Israeli territory.
Yeah, these strikes by Israel follow similar strikes by Houthis a few days ago. They often launch strikes in support of Palestinians. Is this a response to Israel going harder into Gaza City? And if so, could we expect a more sort of tit-for-tat firing or strikes?
Well, certainly the Houthis, like any kind of largely authoritarian group, look to project strength abroad when they're weak at home. And certainly the Houthis have been able to deflect a whole host of issues related to governance, related to society, related to really providing for the persons in the large swaths of territory that they've conquered since they've taken over the parts of that country since 2014, 2015. Here, of course, the Houthis have been talking about being defenders or champions of the Palestinian cause. And while there certainly is a strong pro-Palestinian sentiment both within the Houthis and within Yemeni society, we can't take our eye off the ball that this is still an Iran-backed terror group that is, part and parcel of what is called the axis of resistance. And the coup de grace is, this group, rather than the much older proxies like Lebanese Hezbollah, for example, have the most advanced weapons of the constellation of entire non-state actors. So despite their quote-unquote alleged grievances, they are acting in concert, I think, with a larger strategy from their patron.
And then how much of it, you mentioned sort of domestic issues at play here, how much should we read into that?
We should certainly read quite a bit into that because, again, the Houthis, aren't providing for the Yemeni citizens and persons under their control. We know that this is a group that's absconded with humanitarian aid in the past. That's made it harder for the UN to even deliver humanitarian aid and really has earned the moniker of terrorist group for its use of child soldiers, for its use of going after civilian targets, for its use of even repressing religious minorities and even targeting journalists. So despite, Yemen and the Houthis not being in the news every single day, this really is a major conflict point, both in the Red Sea vis-a-vis Israel and in the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula that deserves more attention given these atrocities.
Yeah, and speaking of the Red Sea and other strikes like that, is there a risk? I mean, we've spoken a bit about this before, about the risk of this sort of spiraling beyond just Gaza and Israel, but that hasn't seemed to have been the case so far.
It hasn't seemed to be the case, but they also haven't really taken their eye off of the ball of threatening some of these ships. Yes, the number is significantly less than the number of targets, the number of cargo vessels targeted during earlier parts of the post-October 7 Middle East military campaigns, be it by the U.S. or by the Israelis. But certainly they retain the intention, the capabilities, and they talk about it, even though the numbers have dropped from where they once were. And nonetheless, alarming numbers for the potential to kind of turn that fire back on in the Red Sea is the number of times, local authorities have actually been able to intercept anti-ship systems by the Iranians going to the Houthis.
Behnam, we'll have to leave it there, but thanks as always for speaking to us. Great to get your perspectives. Behnam Ben Taleblu, Senior Director of the Iran Program at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies.